In a product meeting, how many people have an opinion about UX? I bet you're going to say everyone. Am I right? I knew it. How many actually understand UX? One, if you're lucky, right? So I think the blue button should be green. The interface is confusing. My mom wouldn't understand this easily. It looks too much like competitor X. It's lacking visual personality. I bet you've heard this. You're tired of hearing it in your product meetings, during an interface design presentation, and so on. So that's the thing. The CEO gives their opinion, the CFO gives their opinion, the intern gives their opinion, the doorman gives their opinion. Suddenly, everyone has become an experience expert overnight. And you, PM, caught in the middle of this crossfire, trying to mediate the democracy of ignorance, avoiding product decisions based on a popularity poll. Some meetings, in fact, end up turning into an actual popularity contest. So here's an illustrative story based on real events. A design review meeting for a financial management app. It's in the room, PM, designer, CTO, head of marketing, tech lead, head of sales. Then the designer presents the interface, clean, functional, based on research and studies. And then 30 seconds of silence. Then the massacre begins. The CTO, too simple, doesn't look premium. Marketing, where's our visual identity? It lacks the appeal of our identity. I don't see us in it. In this design, sales, corporate clients won't take this seriously, and the developer, this carousel is going to be complicated to implement. Well, an hour later, the interface is completely different according to everyone's opinions. 3 extra colors, 2 carousels, a bigger logo, more explanatory text, a menu with 8 options instead of 4, and so on. Completely different, right? And then the designer left the meeting visibly frustrated, right? The PM stuck in the middle trying to please everyone, and the result 3 months later, a confusing app, low conversion, users complaining that it's hard to use, but by then it was already too late, right? Because the whole team had collaborated, right? In creating a product that no one could actually use properly. In other words, democracy is beautiful in politics, but terrible in design. Because every company turns into a UX court. And why does this kill products? We need to talk more about this. I think the first point here is that people confuse personal taste with expertise and experience. Oh, I don't like this color. This isn't going to work for the user. In other words, your aesthetic preference is not UX research data. So that needs to be very clear. In fact, one of the phrases I can't stand when it comes to discussing any product decision, especially when it involves interfaces, when it involves experience, journey design, etc., is to say, oh, I like it, I like this material, I like this proposal, and so on. Because whenever I catch myself saying I like it, I always immediately correct myself saying, well, it's not a matter of taste, it's a matter of what makes sense to me in this way. So I think whether you like it or not doesn't really matter. The question is, does it make sense? Is it aligned with what we've analyzed? Is it aligned with what the data indicates? Is it aligned with what the market is indicating, projecting? Is it aligned with the assets that anyway, right? Is it aligned with our discovery? Is it aligned with our research? So it's not a matter of taste. I also think we need to start removing this kind of situation, this kind of word from our vocabulary. Secondly, democratizing opinions about design is like democratizing opinions about surgery. Everyone has a body, but not everyone can perform surgery. So everyone uses apps, but not everyone understands usability principles. It's that simple. Third point, the HiPPO syndrome, that is the opinion of the highest paid person in the room. So if the director doesn't like it, then everything gets changed. Not because there is data, but because there's a corporate hierarchy that has contaminated the creative process. This happens way too often, right, guys? I'm not saying anything untrue here. Fourth point, confusing familiarity with quality. So hearing from a user, oh, this looks like Instagram, is not constructive criticism. Instagram works for Instagram, not for your B2B financial management product, you know. The fifth point, here comes the fifth point, is design by committee, right? It always converges to something mediocre because each person pulls in a different direction and the final result doesn't fully please anyone, but it displeases everyone a little. So it's pretty complicated. Sixth point, lack of objective criteria. So I don't know, without a UX North Star, so to speak, every opinion carries the same weight. So reducing friction is versus adding more options, Without a clear metric, it turns into an endless philosophical debate, So we really need to internalize that every product decision should be based on data, research, context, projections, expertise, and so on. So with all that said, how do we protect UX decisions from this destructive democracy? So I'm going to share 7 strategies that go against the Brazilian culture where everyone gives their opinion. Everyone thinks they're a bit of a doctor or a madman, going along those lines. 7 strategies. The first is, again, folks, let's analyze this critically and base it on your own reality, okay? So the first strategy I bring is establish a hierarchy of opinions. The UX researcher and designer have veto power, the PM has a quality and guidance vote, and the rest of the room has the right to ask questions, not to make decisions. Obviously, we are going to listen because we need to hear people out, to listen to other stakeholders, since they have different points of view that might have escaped everything we've mapped, things that are off our radar, and sometimes they're extremely useful, extremely relevant, and I dare say that in many cases, many times it really does have that relevance, that weight, but we need to listen with moderation, with care, to really understand, not just take it all in and change everything, Second strategy, create a common language about the experience. So, I don't know, do this at the beginning of a project, hold a 2-hour workshop talking about what usability is, what accessibility is, what visual design is, etc. Get everyone on the same page and start from the same point, at least in terms of conceptual knowledge, so that people understand what's behind it all. I usually, actually building on this strategy, I always advise my designers that for every proposal they're going to work on or present, they should have a creative rationale attached to it, right? Things aren't there just because green matches with pink, No, they're there because there's a reason it makes sense. Those things resonate with users in a certain way through tests, validations, and so on. So bring a creative and technical rationale, right? Behavioral, why those things, why those choices, why that proposal is the way it is. So I always ask my designers to bring this kind of material, this kind of information in their proposals. Third strategy, turn opinions into testable hypotheses. So I think the button should be bigger becomes a hypothesis. A bigger button will increase conversion. Just a random example. Then you test it. Data always outweighs opinion. Document design decisions with rationale. So that's what I just mentioned about what I ask of my designers. For example, we use blue because tests show a 15% higher conversion rate than green with our audience and so on. So a decision based on rationale trumps an opinion based on personal taste. Create a design manifesto, in other words, non-negotiable principles of the product. So simplicity over features, accessibility first, mobile first. So any opinion that goes against a principle, in your manifesto, call it whatever you want, is automatically rejected. Sixth strategy, limit the rounds of feedback. So 1 round of comments, one synthesis session, and the third for the final decision, so to speak. Because endless feedback usually leads to paralysis and the old design by committee, right? So this by itself creates that kind of popular poll I mentioned at the beginning, which ends up pulling things toward mediocrity, and that's really bad. 7th, educate stakeholders about the cost of changes. So I don't know. Changing the interface now will delay the launch by 2 weeks and could confuse users who have already tested it. So make these consequences visible. That's important for the process. Anyway, how many UX decisions in your product were made by people who really understand the subject versus how many were made by whoever has the loudest voice in the room? I think you need to reflect on that. It's really important to have this reflection so you can rethink your process and your approach in sessions that involve design decisions. So if you let design be decided by popular vote, you'll end up with a product that looks like Fox Group. Incoherent, confusing, trying to please everyone. That's a subtle criticism of Fox Group, but that's okay. And products that try to please everyone end up not deeply pleasing anyone. So in reality, to wrap up, design is not a matter of taste, it's a matter of results. And results aren't voted on, they're measured. I think that's it. I wanted to leave you with this final thought. I think that it's a fact that these situations happen in our daily lives. And it's super important that you internalize the idea that any decision about a product should be based on data. Okay? That's all for today. Thank you for joining me and see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.